All right, where you want me to start back at?
Uh, yeah, we had to restart the podcast. Welcome to the Front Porch Podcast, where football talk meets front porch wisdom. You were our first topic. Just to catch everybody up, we were trying to decide if we wanted to start with the Big Ten or the NFC. Travis here was sharing that he is high on Penn State and explaining to us why.
Yep. So again, Drew Alar, he's third-year starting quarterback, which is huge, having that longevity at that position. Now, the next position group, which is probably the reason why I'm most excited about them, I'm gonna read you off some statistics and tell me if this guy's gonna be the greatest Heisman or not. 2,027 rush yards, 27 total touchdowns, 59 receptions for 528 yards. That's a total of 2,555 total yards. Does that sound like a Heisman to you?
There's some pretty crazy stats, no doubt.
That sounds like arguably, I mean, maybe the greatest Heisman we've seen in a long time. But those are the combined statistics of both Penn State running backs. They have, according to ESPN, they have two of the top 5 rated running backs in all of college football on their roster. And they're returning. They were there last season, probably didn't get as much recognition as they should have. But coming into this year, obviously there were some big names last year with the Ohio State back, Oregon back, all these other backs. But this year they're going, I believe one's a junior, or they're both juniors, excuse me. But those are their stats from last year. So they have 2 top 5 running backs in college football. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, that sounds like Ohio State last year.
I mean, right? So I love that. They only lost 3, or excuse me, they are returning 3 starting offensive linemen, center, left guard, and left tackle, which is huge. So those 3 guys are coming back from last year. That's huge. Now their biggest problem last year was probably receiver. They didn't have the best receivers, but they've addressed that issue. They grabbed this guy named Trebor Pena from Syracuse, which he's supposed to be really good. He had some really good production at Syracuse last year. They got a guy, Devontae Ross from Troy, really good Troy receiver. I mean, he's not going to be on anybody's, Heisman watch list or anything like that, but a good addition. And then they also have a 4-star recruit. He's a freshman named Matt Alton. He is 6'4", like 220 pounds at receiver, which is, I mean, a big old boy. So they've addressed those issues. Obviously, they lost Abdul Carter. They lost Kevin Winston Jr., the safety, into the draft. But they have guys behind them that are going to take their place. The guy, I'd have to look up his name, but the guy replacing Abdul Carter, he only had like 4 less sacks than Abdul Carter last season. Which is, I mean, so if you have any sort of similar production like you did with Abdul Carter,
No,
I think
how much of that was teams double teaming Abdul Carter, allowing this guy to?
well, then that's a great point. That is a great point. Yeah, well, it's a lot different.
I'm not saying
when
it
you're
is
the
what
guy.
it was, but
Yeah, but they had the 7th ranked defense out of all college football last year. So you love to see that.
so I'm glad you
I
brought
don't know.
that up. I'm actually extreme out of the, because I did some digging on, and one of the teams I did digging on was Penn State, and I have another team that I'm interested to talk about as well. But I'll cover Penn State. You talked about their quarterback and their running back situation, which is great. And then you brought up, their defense was already really good last year. Who had the number 1 defense last year was Ohio State. Well, this year they brought in as their new defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, who was the defensive coordinator for Ohio State last year. So I'm excited to see. I think
Okay.
I think their defense will be, a top 3 defense this year if they continue with the aggressive defense that they had last year, stacked on top of now having Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. I think the defense is going to be special.
I would agree with that, and I will add this about Ohio State. They're a lot like Alabama, but they did have 14 players drafted. So that's essentially 14 NFL players come off their roster. And again, they're like Alabama. They just kind of reload. They have talent behind these guys. But when you lose that many people, I mean, that is That's a lot of shoes to fill.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Penn State's going to be after, like you said, after doing some research. They would have been a lot higher on my way too early predictions as well. I think I would still go. I think it's still hard not to lean on Ohio State as being the top team in the Big Ten, but the Penn State's definitely interesting.
And I'm curious to see. Obviously, the big news at Ohio State now is Julian saying would have loved for him to stick around at Alabama. Whatever, not going to get down that road. But he'll be interesting. We finally get to see him start. I mean, he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. This is now going to be, I believe, he's a sophomore this year, so his first time starting in college. That'll be interesting. Of course, they get Caleb Downs back at DB, so yeah, I mean, they're like I said, they're a powerhouse program. They're always going to have talent. And so yeah, they're always going to be in that running for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So another team that we kind of brushed off that after doing a little bit more research on it, I don't know if you looked into them, was Oregon. I think Oregon's actually going to be also pretty good this year. I'm trying to find what I was looking at. I had all this written down, but I mean, I think we're gonna see a Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State top three, and in the Big Ten.
Which is kind of that is, I mean, they are those power just top. They are a very top heavy conference. Once you get down to mid to lower of that conference, the competition is just not there. So yeah, to say that those three teams are going to be kind of the main competitors at the Big Ten, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and what do you think of all the new additions to the Big Ten? People coming from the West
Oh, I
Coast,
love it.
the West Coast invasion.
I love it. I think it's good for the Big Ten. I think they got some of the best programs from the West Coast. I mean, Washington. I mean, well, I don't want to say UCLA, but UCLA is decent. USC, obviously, Oregon. I like the additions. I think it's only going to make their conference better. I mean, I think that's why the SEC is so good, is because you're playing that top tier talent week in and week out. And maybe that's been an area, pros and cons to everything. You always make the point of, well, they're coming into the playoffs fresh because they haven't had to play SEC teams week in and week out. But also, when you're not playing top tier competition consistently, it doesn't allow your team to grow. You don't learn how to deal with these real teams. So I think adding better competition to their conference, that's just going to make the whole conference better as a whole.
I agree. Do you think that these West Coast teams are going to suffer from some of the travel burdens? Or, well, I mean, I guess both ways. How do you like? The some of these. I think the farthest traveled that I look at from the West Coast to another team that is originally in the Big Ten was 2,900 miles. They'd have to travel for an away game. Having to do that all season long, I feel like that's definitely a disadvantage. The
Yeah,
away
there,
games are
there's
gonna hurt.
yeah, there's no getting around that. Yeah, that sucks, and that is going to cause some issues, and we might see potentially some upsets because of, I mean, like teams that shouldn't lose end up, because of the traveling, and especially depending on, I wonder how their schedules are. Like if they get two away games, like Michigan State back to back weeks, well, hey, you're probably just gonna stay in Michigan, so that kind of makes it a little easier. But if you're getting a lot of back and forth, that's going to be hard on these players and coaches.
Yeah, no doubt. And then I guess my big when I was thinking about one of the biggest tags, and I know that people talk about Ohio State until they can't talk about them anymore, but this is, I mean, they're the defending national title or defending national champs, so it's kind of hard not to stumble upon them. And then also there's they kind of bleed over into our world a little bit with this next point is Julian Sayin from Alabama going. I think we talked a little bit about him last podcast, but not much. I've watched his highlights and stuff. Obviously, we never got to see him play at the college level, but he is now the starting quarterback for Ohio State. And I think, along with that, they added 4 top 50 transfers in the transfer portal. They lost a lot, but they gained a lot as well. So that's a
Yeah,
big reason why I think if Julian Sayin turns out to be anything like what he's supposed to be, Ohio State will be, right back to where they were.
yeah. I don't. I agree 100%. Like I said, that again, they are kind of. I mean, Georgia's been this way. I hate referring to everybody to out, but Alabama's the closest thing that we've seen to just a completely ridiculous dominant dynasty for 17 years. I mean, people 17 years that they were pretty much on top of the college football world. So Ohio State's looking like they're building something. I mean, when they've kind of always been that way, but to be consistently in these national championship games, like that, they're making those moves to be that next team where it's like, hey, every year you can pretty much just expect Ohio State to be there because that's they're getting in guys that can play. Like I said, Julian saying I said it earlier. He's a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. I wish he'd have stayed at Bama, but yeah, if he's anything like he's been hyped up to be, they're going to be right back in the Big Ten championship, the playoffs. I mean, they're going to be there. That's just we need to go ahead and accept that fact for the next I don't know 5 to 10 years that Ohio State's going to be one of those contending teams every year.
Well, yeah, I mean that, and then this new NIL thing really benefits them because that's one thing that they're not afraid to do is spend money, which I know a lot of people like to. I mean, with Texas A&M when it first started, they were Texas ATM, and then now people are saying, "Oh, look, it looks like." It is possible just to buy your way into a national championship. Da 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 da. I know a lot of people say that. I'm not necessarily. I don't feel that way. I think you can spend money on the wrong people, you can spend money on the right people, and even if you spend money on the right people, you still have to coach them correctly. You still have to game plan. There's a lot more to it than just spending a lot of money. But I think Ohio State is kind of the first team to really show that uh, in this new era, spending money is important, even though it's not the end all be all. It's important, and they're not scared to do it. So till
Yeah,
other teams
and
fall behind that,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's and with the new they're looking for like a college football commissioner. They're looking to place these guidelines in place. So there's probably going to be the same thing in the NFL, like a salary cap, how much you can spend. So it's not always going to be like this. But they're going to take advantage of it while the rules are like this, and I don't blame them. I mean, you can't be mad at them that they have money and they're spending it on good players. Like if you had that money, guess what? Your team would be doing the same thing. So I'm not hating on him at all for doing that.
no, no,
I
no.
will say, you said you were talking about Oregon and you were interested on them, or big on them again this year. I'm actually the opposite. I'm actually sort of expecting a decline from Oregon this year. They lost so much. They're only returning one offensive lineman, which is their center. So they're gonna have new guards, new tackles. That's huge. They only have one receiver returning, and it wasn't their best one. Their quarterback supposedly now is supposed to be Dante Moore. He's a
Yeah,
transfer from UCLA. Funny enough, and he
I
wasn't
did see
even the
that.
starter at UCLA last year. Y'all, the Tennessee guy is. So
Yeah.
I got a lot of question marks with Oregon. And Dan Lanning, I think he's a good coach, but we'll really find out what he's made of this year. 'Cause I just think they lost so much, and I don't see the additions that have got me excited about Oregon this year.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they got the. I don't know. Did you mention the Corian Moore, the wide receiver?
No, I didn't. I
Yeah.
didn't
So
mention
I
him.
mean, they got that. I think I might be butchering this. The Corian Moore. He's a 5-star recruit, top ranked wide receiver in the 2025 class. They got him. They've made some additions to the defense. They got the nation's number one cornerback recruit, Naeem Offord. Uh, they're they got that running back from Tulane. I mean, I think they added some things. Do I think that they're going to be national champions or anything like that? Probably not. Do I think they make the playoffs and maybe at least contend for the Big Ten title? I think that that's a pretty good chance. I think they just got to get past Penn State, obviously, and then they have a few of their rivalry games, but they don't even play Ohio State. They don't play Michigan. I think they have a pretty
Yeah.
easy schedule other than Penn State throughout the year.
As far as Big Ten game go, I saw ESPN ranked each each Big Ten schools like conference uh strength of schedule, and Oregon's sitting at 11 out of what 18.
Yeah.
So, like you said, yeah, they do have a fairly easy schedule, and I guess you're right. In the future, Oregon's always going to be a good recruit team. I mean, the uniforms, they're just one of those teams that kids want to go play at. So they're always going to have good recruits.
They
But
got swagger.
yeah, they do. And I'm just speaking this year specifically. I'm not expecting a whole lot. I think I wouldn't be shocked if they missed the playoff. Again, do I think they could make it? Sure. Just because of kind of the lack of competition within the Big Ten. But I wouldn't be shocked if they are a 3-loss team and don't make it either. Like that wouldn't surprise me. But
Yeah.
a team that I am very interested in, and this one is probably gonna people might laugh at. Illinois. Illinois is on my radar, and I got some points why. So they had a 10-3 record last year, which
Yeah.
for them is amazing. Kind of like we were talking about Vandy being a 3-loss team, how that's almost unbelievable. Well, Illinois being a 3-loss team is kind of unbelievable as well.
Well, and they're bringing back their entire roster as well.
Dude, 18 of 22 starters
Yeah.
returning. That was my number one point. Like, so that whole team is coming back, and again the consistency. I
Including
absolutely love that.
Luke Altmaier, which I really liked watching him play as well. I thought he was pretty good. I think this is his third year. He might be a senior.
Yeah, he is.
So yeah, I mean,
And then, of course, you got the head coach Brett Bielema,
yeah.
which he was super successful back in Wisconsin back in the day. He coached. Obviously, we know he coached at Arkansas and everything. But he's actually had some time in the NFL. He's been with the Patriots. He's been with he's been with some big programs in the NFL.
Mhm.
So I think he's a really good coach. So yeah, you give him a second year with this same team. I'm like, hey, this Illinois could be one of those. That's to me is my sneaky Big Ten team. Don't let them get hot because they could be in that Big Ten championship. And on top of that, they have like I just mentioned, the strength of schedule record within the Big Ten. They have the easiest strength of schedule in the Big Ten this year. So that's obviously very favorable. Their biggest issue, which was one of their biggest issues last year, is they did have the 68th ranked defense. I mean, that's pretty dang bad. 68. You're a long way away from being a top 12 team if you have a 68th ranked defense. So, but I don't know. Again, it's hard to know everything about college football. But if they do add some key pieces on their defense, just find a little more ways to win this year. That could be a team where you see them playing in the Big Ten championship.
I think that would be very interesting. I mean, my problem with the way they do the playoffs too is Illinois. If they cannot afford to lose, I think maybe even 2 games with how easy their schedule is. Um, Now if they go to the Big Ten championship, I think that definitely obviously helps. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing that team as well. I actually had them written down uh, as a dark horse myself, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, and I will say again, they ended the year last year with a win against South Carolina, and we were just talking last week about how we're big on South Carolina. I know it was the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, which nobody cares about, but to beat an SEC team like that in a bowl game, I mean that's saying something. So they're coming in with a little bit of head of steam. They did beat Michigan last year, 21-7. They lost to Penn State 21-7. Again, they're one of those kind of bubble teams right now where it's like, man, if they just beat Penn State or something, have that big win, that could be enough momentum to really, like I said, carry them into the playoffs and possibly the Big Ten championship.
I agree, and I don't mean to backtrack a little bit. I was just kind of looking at stuff while we were talking. The Dante Moore, that Oregon quarterback this year, he actually was a 5-star recruit. He transferred from UCLA almost immediately. He played for Oregon last year, but he was redshirted behind Dylan Gabriel. And there's actually a lot of Heisman talk around him going into this
Really?
as his breakout year. He's got plus 1,800 odds to win the Heisman. Um, he's among the top 10 favorites for 2025. It's looks like just predictions wise, projected to surpass 3,000 passing yards and accumulate at least 25 total touchdowns in 2025. I actually kind of missed this too when I was doing my research. I seem to have like the way when I was looking at stuff, I didn't really deep dive on the top three. I was looking for the dark horses like you've been talking about.
Mhm.
So I did miss this, but I think it's very interesting that there's so much Heisman hype around him right now.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that. I mean, obviously I dug into him enough to know his name and all that, but yeah, I didn't realize there was that much hype around him. But that's I mean, that's good for Oregon. If like I said again, a lot of young quarterbacks with saying and stuff like that, and then you got your returning stars with Drew Alar and Luke Altmaier. So kind of a nice fresh balance and some returning starters. But it's going to be an interesting QB battle within the Big Ten this year. Another team that we got to talk about before we wrap up the Big Ten, it's Michigan. I didn't find a whole lot of things.
I have a whole segment right here labeled.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you kick this off. Tell us a little bit about Michigan.
So I actually labeled this. I wanted to talk about Michigan, and I labeled it "Fall of the Empire." It's pretty short. And the topic that I wanted to cover was Michigan's identity crisis. So after losing John Harbaugh, they're now led by Sharon Moore. They went 9-4 last year. They lost. They lost a lot. I mean, and their best player last year was Mason Graham at defensive line, but they don't have a single player that steps out and stands out to me as a leader of the offense. They're projected this year at 8.5 wins, but they play Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon.
Oof.
So
Yeah, that's a rough schedule.
yeah, I don't. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong or if you think differently. Uh, I think 8.5 wins is a very fair projection and maybe even a little bit generous.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, so my biggest thing was losing Jim Harbaugh. It's I know people are going to be tired of hearing me talk about Alabama, but when you lose someone like that, a culture guy, a guy that's like just the face of that school, they're so hard to replace, and it's so hard to keep that traction. Um, so yeah, this Sharon Moore, whatever his name is, we're gonna have to see what he can do. I don't like I said, I haven't seen any good recruits that they've gotten. I don't know much about them this year. Even during my digging, like I said, I didn't find anything that jumped off the pages. So I think, like you said, 8.5 wins. That's kind of right there at their sweet spot. I don't see them being a playoff team, but I just figured, with them being the 2 year ago national champion again with Jim Harbaugh, I felt like we should at least bring them up and see where both of us thought that they would be this year. But I do think you're right on the money with about 8.5 wins.
Yeah, I mean they did get that Bryce Underwood guy that flipped from LSU to Michigan. Um,
Okay.
and he was the nation's top recruit in 2025 at quarterback.
What position? Quarterback.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's 6'4", 208. But I don't know. I mean, this will be true freshman. He's supposed to be a dual threat quarterback, and I mean, we've seen top recruits do exactly what they're supposed to, and we've seen some bust. So I didn't really want to say too much about him. I haven't watched highlights. I don't know a lot about him other than what I've seen on ESPN. And then building on that, their leading starting running back is also a true freshman, Jordan Marshall. He was
Hmm.
in 2023. He was Ohio Mr. Football. In 2024, he was the Relia Quest Bowl MVP. Oh, I'm sorry, he'll be a sophomore. But uh, other than that, I mean, they just don't like. If you look at key players to watch, this is how I know that Michigan just doesn't have a lot to offer right now. I searched key players to watch for the 2025 season for Michigan, and it gave me 4 players. One of those 4 players is a kicker as a key player to watch. It's just
So that kind of tells you all you need to know.
they don't have a lot going on. I mean, 2 of the 4 key players are young, untested players that have good resumes from high school, but nothing to show in college. And the other one is Rod Moore at safety. he missed the entire 2024 season due to injury. He's a veteran. I think he's a fifth year senior. So he brings some leadership to that defense. But yeah, then the fourth one's a kicker. And I'm not saying anything bad about kickers. This guy, they're very important. He set school records for field goals over 50 yards and, is extremely reliable scoring option in close games, which is very important. But when you look up, it's not my opinion on kickers that is bad, because I think kickers are one of the most important positions on a team. But overall, like just sports analysts and stuff, when you look up key players, they don't normally put kickers unless you don't have anything else to throw in there.
No, I 100% agree. So that I think that kind of wraps up how we feel about Michigan this year. If we're talking about their kicker, hey,
Yeah.
maybe just kick the ball every time you get it. I don't know. They did. I'll give them one last thing. They did have a top 10 defense last year. I think they're actually at number 10. So defense wins championships. Hell, maybe kickers win championships. Who knows? But not expecting a whole lot from Michigan.
I mean, like I said, about 8.5 wins is what they were last year. I think last year they ended with 8 wins.
Yeah, be right around that mark again.
Yeah, about where they're I think they're going to lose 3 games for sure: Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. Now, I will say that some of those games can get hairy just being in conference, same way it does in the SEC or any other conference. So, because Big Ten or Oregon, well, they were a completely different team. Like Michigan did beat Ohio State last year, right? Which is, I think, a big reason why Ohio State had their success in the playoffs. They came in hungry after losing to Michigan, but that's besides the point. That's a rivalry game, and anything can happen.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, I think that wraps up the Big Ten. I mean, I think we covered most. I mean, you got your Rutgers and Northwest. You got these other teams. Not to be disrespectful to them, whatever. But again, the Big Ten's very top heavy this year. Well, we can close out one last thing with the Big Ten, just because you're a Tennessee guy. Do you think Nico's going to have any sort of success at UCLA, or do you? Because they were the second worst team in the Big Ten, or second or third, somewhere around there. But
Yeah.
bottom tier Big Ten. Do you think he does anything for that program, or do they just kind of stay where they're at? Maybe he gets them an extra win or two. What do you think?
So I am kind of interested by UCLA a little bit. I've heard some about them, obviously just through the Nico thing, and then also while doing my research. I honestly didn't know if I was going to bring them up or not until you did. But they are not only Nico, but they also do have a brand new head coach this year, Deshaun Foster, who played in the NFL. He coached at Texas Tech as a running back coach, and in one of his interviews, he talks about, which made me like him a little bit. He talks about bringing a SEC style run first physical offense to the UCLA Bruins. So, maybe
Like
not
that?
maybe not this year. They do have a pretty good running back. I can't remember his name. Can't remember his name, but they got a good linebacker as well, Carson Schwessinger. He's one of their big players that's supposed to be strong on the defense. Obviously, they got Nico, who's a good young talent. They also got Nico's brother behind him at quarterback. So they got two Amalivias.
Yeah.
and a
That's interesting.
and a head coach that wants to bring a SEC style run first offense. So I think it'll be interesting to watch them. I'll definitely watch a few games just to see how Nico does. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to do much this year. But if that head coach can really, if he stands true to wanting to be that style of offense in college, if you can really build a really good run first team, they always seem to do pretty good as long as you have a good defense. I think that's the key. Is if you want to be a run heavy football team, you have to have a really good defense that keeps the score low. That way you can
Allows you
continue
to run.
to run the ball.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you don't have a good defense, then you're out of luck. So
All right.
what you'll have to look for in the UCLA Bruins this year.
Okay. I like that. Good information. I didn't know about the new head coach and his plans for UCLA, so I like that a lot. I will say, I think Nico killed his draft stock. Now, if he goes out to UCLA and balls out, fine. But I think if he would have just even stayed, I don't want to say average because I think he was maybe a little above average in some areas. If he'd have stayed at Tennessee, I think his draft stock would have been higher. I think we'll see what happens there, but I think he might have killed a really good shot of him getting a high draft pick into the NFL, which well, that can go ahead and roll us into the NFL. I think we covered the Big Ten pretty well. So,
Yep.
do you have a storyline in the NFL or a division that you kind of want to start talking about?
So, I mean, I'm like you. I didn't do a whole bunch of research because I think I have a pretty good uh
Grass.
pretty good grasp on the NFC. Hold on just 1 second. I'm having problems
Well,
with.
all right. Well, we can. I'll go ahead and just
Yeah,
start us
go
off
ahead.
at a point in your Seahawks division. I think a very interesting team this year is the 49ers. They actually have the highest odds in their division to win their division, which is
Yeah.
largely due to their last place schedule because they finished last in the NFC this year. So they play the worst teams in the NFC again this year. They also play the AFC South and the NFC South as a part of their schedule, which are arguably the two easiest divisions in football, which the Rams do too, but the Rams are going to have to play teams like the Lions, the Eagles. I think they play the Ravens. So I think that's kind of what gave the Niners the edge, but people are looking at them to kind of have a bounce back year. I mean, do you think paying Brock Purdy was the right move? And do you think that was a good investment? I mean, they didn't pay him top dollar. He's getting like 50 million a year, which is actually now funny enough, kind of a discount rate at a quarterback position. But do you like that signing? What do you think about the Brock Purdy move?
So we talked a little bit about it, I think, last podcast, or maybe I was talking to somebody else about it outside of our podcast. But uh, I think Brock Purdy, it was, I was talking to somebody at work about it. I think Brock Purdy is a good sign for the 49ers. Outside of that, I think if another team was to give him that deal, I wouldn't agree with it. I don't want to call him a system quarterback, but I do think Shanahan's offense definitely enhances his better features.
Yeah, there's probably a good majority of guys in the NFL, starting guys in the NFL, could go there and be successful. But
Well, I
not
think
to cut off your point, go
okay.
ahead, continue.
Well, and on your point, I mean, and I'm not saying that anybody could just go replicate what Brock Purdy's doing. I just think that Brock Purdy, the skill set that he does have, is perfect for the 49ers, where it wouldn't necessarily be a good fit in other schemes. Again, not that I'm sure he could probably change up depending on the scheme, but I think the 49ers, as of right now, with that Kyle Shanahan offense, is the best place for him to be and their best option moving forward currently. I mean, there's a reason why, and I don't know if the 49ers owners and staff were telling other NFL teams don't even reach out. We're planning on giving him the bag, so there's no need. But during that period of time where it was kind of looming in the air, were the 49ers going to pay him or not? There were no offers for trades. Buddy,
Yeah.
with all the quarterback movements in the NFL, the Steelers still don't even have a quarterback, even though most people think Aaron Rodgers. Uh, with all the quarterback movements, there wasn't one whisper of anybody looking to pick up or try to trade for Brock Purdy. Now, again, that could have been the 49ers saying he's off limits and we're going to pay him. But I think it kind of tells a little bit of a story that his name never even was talked about.
Well, I'll say this in defense of Brock Purdy. He he's been to a Super Bowl and he was one play away. I mean, he damn near beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, which I always hate. I'm not going to go off on a tangent on that. But again, he was there. They pretty much won. I mean, as close as you can get to winning a Super Bowl, he was there. And there's a lot of guys. I mean, you look at Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's had really good teams. He's never been to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow has had one of the best teams in the NFL and he's easily regarded as the number 2, 3, 4, whatever quarterback you have him at, but he's a top 5 quarterback for sure. He didn't win the Super Bowl. He lost. So again, yeah, he a system quarterback? Sure. But how many guys can actually get your do what needs to be done? That's what I'm saying. We talked about college, some teams like Georgia and the Carson Becks, the Greg McElroys, there's so much talent that they don't have to be a top 5, top 10 guy. But still, you still have to be a great game manager, a great system guy. You still have to do your job to get to the Super Bowl and damn near win it. So again, I think paying him was the right move. There's not a whole lot of guys that have the ability to even get you to that game. Now, is he going to take over a game and win it for you? No, but he's also not a guy that's going to lose it for you either. So if you have a good enough team around him, he's obviously already shown that he can get you there, and he can play good enough to win you the game. So if that's a guy, I'd take him. I want a guy that can take me to the Super Bowl and win it. Like Brock Purdy's shown he can do that. Now it's just, hey, now we just need some good receivers. We need a good O line. We need good running backs. Every good Super Bowl winning team has all those pieces, and they've got that quarterback piece figured out. So I think great job for them for paying him. And now let's see what he does. Now he's got his money. Let's see if they can continue to grow and be back on top like they were just a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, after after looking a little bit more, I'm definitely higher on the 49ers than I was, but it's still kind of a wait and see for me. I still don't, you know, I hate it, but Christian McCaffrey's getting older and still can't seem to stay healthy. Their defense is still strong. I think that they're going to have a very good defense, and they did load up their offense a little bit this year. Obviously,
Re-sign Fred Warner on defense. Love that move.
I think best linebacker in the NFL, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to watch. I think it hinges on their offense more than their defense this year. I think their defense is going to be good. You can almost bank on that, and then if their offense can pick up the pieces.
Yeah. One last thing on the Niners before we move on. Christian McCaffrey is turning 29 this year. He's coming off of a torn ACL, so that's obviously a huge storyline. They lose Debo, so yeah, you're right. The biggest question marks right now is on that offensive side of the football. So it'll be interesting. Let's see what they do. But in that same division, I like the Rams. I think the Rams adding Devontae, I think that is a bump up from Cooper Kupp. No disrespect to Cooper Kupp, but he's aging. He's showing it. And Devontae's older too, but I think at this point in both their careers, Devontae is still more productive than Cooper Kupp. So love that addition. They returned a lot of the players. I know they had a good draft. So I really like the Rams. The Rams are kind of one of I know people are talking about them, but they're one of my possible Super Bowl picks. Like if you give me 10 teams that might make the Super Bowl this year, the Rams are easily on that list. No questions asked.
Yeah, I think their defense lacks a little bit there. I'm confused as to why that they didn't make any sort of moves to try to reinforce their secondary. They have one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. Which
True, they do. Yeah.
in the NFL, I mean it's very pass heavy nowadays, and if you have a weak secondary, if you don't have just a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase style explosive offense where you can outscore the other team. And even them, we saw them even with an explosive offense struggle last year because their defense just were letting teams score 50 points a game in some scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be their biggest their weakest point is their secondary. So
Yeah. Like I said, they could have made some better moves. I love that the now going into his second year, Jared Verse on that defensive line. Not that you can ever replace Aaron Donald, but he's been giving them Aaron Donald like production on that defensive front. So do love that, but you're right. They need to tighten up that secondary if they're really going to make a serious Super Bowl push. Um, your Seahawks. What are you thinking about the Seahawks?
So, I mean, I know we didn't make the playoffs last year, but I think we had a good year last year. We won 10 games, the only reason we didn't go to the playoffs was due to a tiebreaker situation. You know, that happens. But we had the same record as the Rams last year. Rams just happened to win the head to head, I think. But we're interesting this year. I mean, obviously getting rid of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Geno Smith, and like completely revamping that offense minus our running back room. I'll be interested to see what Sam Darnold does. Cooper Cup. The biggest thing I'm excited for on the offense is uh Jackson Smith and the Jigba. Seeing him as a true number one, I think he's going to have a breakout year this year. And then our defense. You know, we signed Demarcus Lawrence at defensive edge. Signed him
Great sign.
to a 3-year deal. Yeah, so I'm excited for that. I'm excited for Mike McDonald to continue his. I mean, he's a defensive minded coach. If we need any help anywhere right now, it's the defense. So uh,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see him work. I know that I know we have some talent on the defense. You know, we have Julian Love. He's a Pro Bowl safety, had 109 tackles last year and 3 interceptions, which isn't just mind blowing numbers, but um, I'm excited to our secondary. I think is pretty stout. I just think we kind of struggle in the run game at times, but with Demarcus Lawrence and then Leonard Williams obviously returning, I think that'll definitely help us out there.
Yeah, I think I'm just an outsider's Seahawks observer. I'm not a fan like you, so I don't go deep into the roster. So obviously great points that you've made. I just want to see Sam Darnold. Is he going to have the same sort of success that he had at the now? When I say same sort of success, I mean from a purely individual standpoint. Obviously, he had he had Kevin O'Connell at head coach. Like he was in the Vikings is probably looked at as one of the greatest spots for a quarterback to thrive. So I'm not saying that he's going to have same sort of record success, but individually, is he going to look the same? Is he going to make those throws? I think last year gave him a lot of confidence. People forget, he was the number one overall pick. He just happened to go to the Jets and then the Panther. He's been thrown around this league, but he's now finally gotten to a point where I think he feels confident. He knows he can play in this game, and now it's time to see. This is his team. He has the keys to the kingdom. I don't think Jalen Milroe's like a serious succession plan. I think he's an experiment, and if he works out, great. But I don't think that they're seriously thinking that Jalen Milroe is going to be the future of the Seattle Seahawks. So I think this is his program. So he needs to go ahead and get comfy, and if he wants to have finish out his career as a starting quarterback, this is where he's going to do it at. So I'm curious to see what he's got.
You know, you bring up that. I think it's funny. Not that I necessarily agree with it, but there's a lot of. I've seen some things out there where a lot of people are predicting Jalen Milroe to end up being the starter before the end of the year. Which I think is
No way.
insane. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
a wild take. Let's
Love Jalen Milroe. I would love for. I'm a fan of his. No, no offense. I'm glad he's gone from Alabama, but he's a great guy. He's a fun player to watch. I hope he has success in the NFL, but if I'm betting my house on it, I'm betting that he's going to be a backup quarterback for the rest of his life. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's best case scenario to be a back. I'm not trying to be mean about him, but best case scenario is he keeps a job in the NFL. I think that if he remains the same passing wise as we saw at Alabama, that he might only have a 5 or 6 year, and then we never hear the name Jalen Milroe again.
That's not the case. I think he's an exciting player, and if he can learn to read a defense for the love of God, then I think he'll be dangerous in the NFL if he can just gain some of the NFL talents that you need to be a good quarterback, and that mostly
Yeah.
surrounds the actual pocket passing. If he can do what
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson did, when Lamar Jackson came in, we were talking about it the other day. He everybody said, nothing but a running back, nothing but a running back, and he worked his ass off to prove that wrong. Learned to be a good passer, which he was a good passer in college. He was definitely better than Jalen Milroe. But
But he grew. He's grown a lot,
he's
obviously.
grown a lot,
Yeah.
yeah. if Jalen Milroe can take on that kind of mindset, then then I think he's got a bright future. If he
Yeah,
stays kind of where he's at, and it also depends on how the Seahawks use him. I know that I've heard rumbles of them kind of doing a two quarterback system a little bit and letting no him coming in on special packages. I want him to be a true number two quarterback, sit on the sidelines and learn from Sam Darnold. I don't want because and I think we brought this up last podcast that splits his practices in half, where he's
yeah.
going to spend half his practice running the special packages, which probably are around his legs, and he's going to spend half his practice being a quarterback. So,
Put put cinder blocks under his cleats and make him stand in that pocket and throw.
yeah.
Because that's like, if he can do that with his legs, yeah, his ceiling is Lamar Jackson and his floor is unemployed. So
Yeah, that's which is an insane range.
yeah, but I mean, like he could be that two-time NFL. I mean, he has that potential with his athleticism, the arm strength. It's all there. He's just got to learn to make smart reads and be more accurate. If he can, and that which isn't a very hard thing to do, but it also makes me want, do they have that guy in Seattle that's going to develop him as a quarterback? I don't know who their quarterback coach is. Most teams don't know who that guy is, but that's going to be a very important thing for Milroe. Do they
Yeah.
have a guy there that's going to allow him to develop and teach him, hey, this is how you read defenses. Hey, we're going to work on accuracy drills. Because you're right. If he can figure those things out, watch out, NFL. The Seahawks now have Lamar Jackson in the NFC.
I'll tell you one thing, and this is a long shot at just kind of a more so a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a coincidence. But we were talking about Lamar Jackson, and if there's one person that knows truly what Lamar Jackson's everyday schedule was, learning how to not be a running back, it's Mike McDonald. I know he was the defensive coordinator, but he was there. He was at the Ravens watching Lamar Jackson grow, and maybe he has some insight on what Jalen Milroe needs to do to get out of his or to yeah to get out of his comfort zone.
That that's good. The Cardinals, I don't think anybody cares too much about them. I'm hoping that they don't waste Marvin Harrison Jr. This is now his second year with Kyler. I don't really care to spend a lot of time talking about the Cardinals, but I'm expecting them to probably finish last in that division, maybe second to last. But as far as the playoffs go, they're nowhere on my radar. I would be very shocked if they ended up being even in the playoff race this year.
Yeah, I'm not too high on the Cardinals either. I think they will be last in the NFC West. They did kind of revamp their defense a little bit, adding Josh Sweat and Walter Nolan, which I think is, two good pickups, but I'm not super high on them. I don't really have a lot of talking points for the
All right,
Cardinals.
let's move on to
Let's
arguably.
okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh well, I was going to say arguably the most interesting division in the NFC. It was last year. I believe it's going to be again this year, and that's going to be the NFC North. You got
Yep.
your Lions, your Packers, your Bears. Why am I drawing a blank? Lions, Packers, Bears, and
Oh my.
Vikings. Thank you, Vikings. Who do you see coming out of that as the division winner this year? And what's kind of your take on the NFC North this year?
So I think the two teams we're looking at are the Packers and the Lions. I mean, I don't know what Caleb Williams is going to look like at the Bears, but until they have a better offensive line, I mean, I think he was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL last year, or close to it. They were up there.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. I mean, and then you got the Vikings. They lost a few key players on defense, and I'm not just. I will say one thing about the Vikings. We'll get back to who we think is going to win the North because I don't think it's going to be the Vikings. But there's a lot of anticipation around JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm not again. Now, to me, look what he did at Michigan. He won the national championship, but he wasn't anywhere close in the Heisman voting. He's not. He is your Brock Purdy, your Kirk Cousins. He's that system guy, and if he can be that for them, that's kind of all they need. Get the ball, make the correct reads, make the right throws, and that's kind of all you have to do in that offense. But
And get the
could
ball,
I,
Justin
do I,
Jefferson.
yeah, do I see them being could I see them being successful with JJ? Sure. But do I see JJ McCarthy ever holding up a Lombardi trophy? No. I don't see it at all. So yeah, I'm not big on the Vikings this year. I think, maybe he figures it out a little bit in the future, but I think they're going to be hanging around the Bears, fighting for that third place spot in the NFC. Like you said, it's Lions and Packers up there at the top.
Yeah, I know you're way too early prediction, so I kinda already know your answer for who's gonna win the North, but in your way too early Super Bowl prediction, you put the Packers in the Super Bowl, so you,
I did.
you clearly think that the Packers are gonna win the North as well, which I don't. I mean, I was with you last week in our podcast about the Packers, being not I don't know if I would consider them a dark horse because I mean, they're obviously like a program that has rebuilt itself and made its presence known in the NFC and especially the NFC North. Um, but I think I still have to pick the Lions over them in the North just because I don't know if it's because I like the Lions way more than I like the Packers. I just love watching the Lions play, man. Their offense is so fun to watch. I love
Oh, I
Amon St. Brown. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL to watch right now. I love their their running back duo. The Sonic and Knuckles is maybe the coolest
nickname. Yeah.
nickname for a duo I've ever heard in my life. The Lightning and the
Oh,
Thunder that they got going on. I predicted Jahmyr Gibbs to be the best running back in the NFL this year, and I'm still sticking to my guns. Give me the Detroit Lions.
like, and again, I'm with you. I like the line. I don't care really for the Packers. My and as I mentioned last week's episode, my biggest holdback is that they lost Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator, which I think he was clearly a mastermind. I mean, we saw some of the plays they ran, but he was an amazing play caller. Had that offense clicking. Aaron Glenn, I finally remembered his name, defensive coordinator. He was amazing. He's now the head coach at the Jets. So losing those two pieces to me is kind of why I'm expecting not a downslide. I still think the Lions are a playoff team this year, but I do think that the Packers just squeak them out, maybe by a head-to-head matchup, and take the division. So yeah, I think the Lions are going to be great, but the Packers, it's just so hard to sustain success. So I think the Packers, with the addition of Matthew Golden, they added an offensive tackle. What's Anthony Belton's his name? So they've got another tackle on the line. They already have a pretty good O line, but I like that they added someone. They added some edge rushers on defense, a defensive tackle, cornerback. So I just kind of think that this is the year. I think Matt LaFleur is a hell of a head coach, so I'm expecting big things from him. And I just there's not really any particular reason. I just think that they've kind of been quietly lurking in the shadows as a legit Super Bowl team. And I just kind of think this is the year they make that leap. I think the Eagles, again, it's hard to sustain success. I mean, do I think they have a Super Bowl slump? I don't know about a slump, but I don't think they're going to go back. So if I don't think it's going to be them, if I'm expecting the Lions to struggle a little bit with these new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinators, who's that next team up? And for me, it logically was just like, I think the Packers. I think they're kind of that third team I'm looking at in the NFC. And you could say the Commanders, of course, and we'll get to them in a minute. I'm not trying to dismiss them, but I think the Packers have a little bit more, which is funny because they've been talked about, oh, they're the youngest team in the NFL, whatever. But they've been together now for a few years. The receiving core is young, but now they've got another young guy. And I just think they're getting better each year, and I think this is the year they make that jump. So
Yeah, one thing I am concerned about, which I cannot for the life of me figure out why they're toying around with him, is Alexander, the cornerback at the Packers.
yeah,
They
Jair.
yeah, Jair Alexander. They still haven't they're negotiating contracts and still haven't signed him. And I don't know why they won't give him the bag. The Packers are sitting at like 10th overall for having the most cap space. They have plenty of cap space. It wouldn't hurt them to sign him. It would free up a little bit to release him. He's a two-time all Pro Bowl cornerback or all pro cornerback. Um I think he's a
Yeah,
big piece of that defense, and for it to still be going on this long, they said we'll hear something maybe by June 1st. And that they've shown interest in trading him, all kinds of stuff. And I don't know how I feel about that, but
yeah, I think that's a good point. I actually didn't realize he was in contract negotiations with them right now. So good job bringing that up. But Yeah, he's one of those guys, you gotta sign him. If you wanna be legit, just sign him. Now, I will say, with them taking so long, let's take a look at the Packers. They are one of those franchises where they are always planning for the future success. They might, they're going to be relevant every single year. That's why they drafted Jordan Love in the first round when they still had a good 2, 3 years left with Aaron Rodgers. Like they're always thinking about the future. So I don't think it's that they don't want to sign them, but they are going to try to work the best deal possible where it's like, hey, maybe they only think Alexander has 2 or 3 good years left. So it's like, we want to re-sign him, but we don't want to give him what he's wanting. So working out that deal can be tricky on a guy like that. But I do think if they're going to be competing for a Super Bowl this year, you got to get that guy back.
Yeah, he's one of the best one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a leader.
Yeah.
He's a leader on that team. He's a leader in the locker room. I'm sure he's a leader on the defense with Rashawn Gary, who uh those are your top three highest paid players on the Packers as of right now is Rashawn Gary, Jordan Love, and then Jair Alexander. And they still have
Well,
plenty of cap space.
then and you just we're sitting here talking about their division. They got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams. They got Cortland Loveland for the Bears, DJ Moore, who's the guy they just drafted last year. I mean, like that whole, of course, Justin Jefferson and I mean, dude, it's that whole division might be one of the best receiver divisions in football. So if you're the Packers, you got to have a cornerback that can keep up with those guys. And if he's proven that he can do that, yeah, I mean, you don't have a choice. If you want to compete within that division with all those receivers, Roma Dunze was the guy I was thinking of for the Bears. But yeah, it's like you got to have these top cornerbacks. So yeah, to me, it's a no brainer. Sign them.
Yeah, I mean, after him in their cornerback room, they got Kayshawn Nixon, Carrington, Valentine, and then they picked up in the free agency Nate Hobbs. It's
Yeah, none of it. Don't know any of those guys. Yeah,
yeah,
sign Jair.
they need him back there. I think every team needs at least one semi-elite cornerback to be able to lock
Yeah.
down every other team's wide receiver one. If not, you're gonna get somebody like Amon-Ra St. Brown's gonna eat you for lunch, and then that uh,
Yeah.
would pretty much wrap up the NFC North right there, I think, for the Lions. So Jair Alexander might be a bigger piece than what people realize.
I agree. I will say one last thing just to touch on the Bears real quick. I'm looking at future success for them. I think Ben Johnson, obviously, we've never seen him be a head coach before, but if he has any sort of offensive success that he did at the Lions with the Bears, they have all these pieces. They have Caleb Williams. I mean, that could be a team in the next year or two that we're really talking about. But this year, his first year there, I think they're going to go through some growing pains again. I think they are a little bit better than last year, but it's going to be a couple years before we're like seriously talking about the.
Yeah, and I'm still not. Again, I brought them up earlier. I'm still not 100% sold on Caleb Williams, but I don't think that's fair to him since he has a middle school football team blocking for him.
Yeah. Well, and stupidly enough, the Bears drafted Cortland Loveland, which he is a good blocking tight end, so I'll give him that. But they didn't draft an offensive lineman until the third round this year. So, like you said, your worst part of your team was offensive line, and all you did was go out and get more weapons. They drafted Cortland Loveland and they drafted that TCU receiver in the second round.
Yeah.
So it's like, dude, y'all already had Roma Dunze, DJ Moore. I mean, they just got rid of Keenan Allen, but like your weapons are fine. Give him protection so he has time to find these weapons, and they didn't really address that in the draft. So yeah, I don't like that one.
All right, let's go. Before we wrap this up, let's do what we did with the AFC and let's go division, and let's see what our predictions are for the people to win this. We'll start with NFC East. We got the Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders. I think this one's actually more. I know that there's an obvious, easy answer here with the defending Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think it's a little bit more interesting than what people give credit, and I think that's due to the Washington Commanders. I think.
Well, I was
And
go
I
ahead.
mean,
Sorry.
even the Cowboys, I know they're regular season merchants, but I, I'm always higher on the Cowboys than I need to be. I still haven't learned my lesson there. But the Commanders, for sure, I think that if you're high on the Commanders, it's for a good reason. And I don't think I don't think that oh, there you go, Jaden Daniels. I don't think he is uh, a regular season merchant. I think he's a great player and has a bright future ahead of him. And the Commanders are doing nothing but building a team around him.
Yeah, they beefed up that offensive line, gave him an extra weapon. Yeah, like what the Commanders did.
Yeah, and then I mean you have other than the Commanders, Cowboys, and Eagles, you got the Giants, which
I'm interested to see what happens with Jackson Dart in the future. They're going to finish last in the NFC East. It is what it is. But getting Jackson Dart, I think, might be one of those moves that people look back on and they're like, damn, good job trading back into the first round and getting him because now he's I'm not expecting him to be a superstar, but being in that top 15 category, just a good starting quarterback in the NFL, I
yeah,
could see that being a very, very real possibility for him.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, and I don't want to start. I would like to do every podcast that we have from here on out without ever mentioning the name Shadur Sanders because I can't stand.
Yeah,
I'm so tired of hearing about him.
same.
It's not that I don't think he will be good in the NFL. It's not that I think
I
that he
don't.
deserved to fall that short. I don't have super strong opinions on it. It's a wait and see for me. I'm just sick of hearing about it. But I like the pickup of Jackson Dart. If I was a GM, I would have taken him before Shadur. I would have taken him before Shug. Um,
Yep.
and then
Yeah, he was. Yeah, go ahead.
with that pick, they also got Abdul Carter, which I think is going to be an
Yeah,
immediate impact in the NFL.
hundred
Uh,
percent.
so they're definitely something to look for in the future. I just don't think it's going to be this year. They got a lot left to build.
I'll say this: we're talking NFC East. The NFC East has not had a repeat division winner in 21 years.
Yeah.
So the same team has not won that division twice. So I know you say that the obvious easy pick is the Eagles, but based off of history for the last 21 years, I mean, we can almost easily predict that it won't be the Eagles because that's what the track record of the NFC East has told us. With that being said, who do you have coming out winning that NFC East, getting that home playoff game this year?
I like the Commanders. I
Yeah,
like the Commanders. Uh I think Jaden Daniels is going to be even better this year. I think that Debo is going to free up Scary Terry quite a bit. I think Scary Terry is going to have an insane year this year.
yeah,
I'm looking forward to watching the Commanders play. I've paid attention to them a lot more last year since I found out my sister's been a lifelong fan of the Washington Commanders. I had no idea, but she's been a fan apparently her entire life. Never rooted for the Cowboys or anything, but so so
but
so I'm excited to watch them play.
yeah, I would have to agree with you again. I've already mentioned this a million times with the Eagles. I see them, they're going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to have a little bit of that Super Bowl slump. They're not going to be that same team they were last year. I just think it's natural. It just kind of happens. The Cowboys surprisingly have the fourth worst playoff chance in the NFC, not the NFC East.
The
The NFC.
NFC.
They have the ESPN odds books are saying they have the fourth worst chance to make the playoffs with this new head coach. I just don't know what to make of him. We've never seen him as a head coach. I know his name. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but Cowboys I'm out on. Giants I'm out on. So 100% it's between the Eagles and Commanders. So yeah, give me the Commanders. I love what they did. They're only getting better. Jaden Daniels is the real deal. I think that we could possibly he's going to be in the MVP talk this year. I'll go ahead and say that. I mean,
Yeah.
whether he's a top 3, top 5, but he's going to have that MVP conversation going around his name. So yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I like the Commanders coming out of the East.
And on one thing on the East, or specifically the Eagles, we talked about it last podcast. It has been confirmed the tush push was not banned. So tush push
Yep.
will remain in the NFL, which I think is awesome. Uh, there were
Yeah. That was the right move.
It's hilarious. There were 10 teams that voted to keep the tush push in, and 9 of those teams do not play the Eagles this year. You know, the one team that does play the Eagles this year that voted to keep the tush push was
The Buccaneers,
The Bucks. Yep.
and they got some big old boys on their defensive line.
Yes, they do.
And I love that.
Oh, I love
And
it.
shoot, that we can go ahead and roll right into the NFC South then. We got the Buccaneers, we got the Falcons, we got the Saints, and we got the Panthers. Who are you liking out of that division?
So the Saints don't exist. The the Panthers, I think, you know, I'm not. They looked hot towards the end of the year. Bryce Young started to find some rhythm. I think they'll be interesting to watch. But the two teams that I'm obviously looking at are the Falcons and the Bucks. And I'm leaning towards the Bucks. I love Baker. Yep. And then, like I said, I love Baker. We talked about it just a second ago. Their defense, they got some old school, big SEC sized, like Arkansas sized defensive
Yeah,
linemen, which I absolutely love. I think that there's pros and cons to that, obviously. Speed in the NFL is becoming more and more important, but you see like peaks and valleys of how football in general, college and NFL, kind of go through a big run game, and then you'll see like a passing league for a little bit. It's overwhelmingly for the past, I would say, 5 to 10 years been a passing league, but we talked about it last podcast. We're seeing a resurgence in the run game. So those big boys are going to be helpful with that, but I still think you need some speed to set the edge and to rush the quarterback and things like that. So I'm interested to see how an oversized defensive line does compared to some of the more slim uh edge setting defensive lines that we see becoming more
yeah,
popular nowadays. But
yeah.
give me the Bucks to win the NFC South.
Okay, yeah, and I will say Baker Mayfield's been in the Pro Bowl the last 2 seasons he's been with the Bucks. So he's just getting better and better down there. This is his 8th year in the NFL, and this is also his 8th different NFL offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So please, dear God, whatever, if this guy ends up working out, just keep him. Let Baker Mayfield have some consistency at the offensive coordinator position, because I think Baker Mayfield is awesome. I'm very high on him. I love, like I said, they have one of the probably maybe the best receiving group in the NFL. Bucky Irving at backfield, like they are a legit team. Got the big boys on defense, like you said. I love them too. Now I'll go ahead and say that. Yeah, I want them. I like them to come out of the NFC South is the top dog. Michael Penix, it'll be interesting. Now it's his team. They got a $55 million a year quarterback sitting on the bench at Kirk Cousins. So Michael Penix, you better be the guy, because otherwise the whole city of Atlanta is going to hate you.
Yeah.
So that one's interesting. The Panthers, I'm actually expecting a little bit more. I did, like you said, Bryce Young really did come into his own last year after he got benched. He started looking really good. They won like their last 6 out of their last 8 games or something like that. They kind of got on a hot streak at the end. And then they added was Tatoria McMillan, the Arizona wide receiver, who was clearly the best wide receiver in the draft. I love that they took him. Give Bryce Young a true weapon on offense. His stats in college were crazy. Since 2022, he was number 5 in receptions, number 1 in receptions of 20 plus air yards, number 1 in receiving yards, and tied for 3rd in receiving touchdowns. So he's this guy, that McMillan guy, he's the real deal. So I think they really got themselves a true blue chip number 1 wide receiver at the Panthers.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot of their offseason moves outside of that, but I do know they got on the hot streak. I like the addition of McMillan. So I'm expecting the Panthers to be a little better this year. But yeah, it should be. I'm expecting Bucks out of the South. The Falcons, we'll see. I think the Panthers might give the Falcons a run for their money for that number 2 spot.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the Panthers as well. They also, I mean, in the draft, like you said, they did get that McMillan guy, and then they got Jimmy Horn Jr. as well, who
Yep.
just another weapon, and we'll see what he turns into. In their wide receiver room, I mean, it's looking better and better with McMillan. They got Adam Thielen, they got Xavier Legette, who I think I'm still waiting. I was high on Xavier Legette. He reminded me a lot of like a DK Metcalf style wide receiver. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of still waiting on him to have his breakout season. But I mean, outside of that, they still have Jalen Coker, Hunter Renfro, David Moore. They've got a decent tight end room. And then at running back, they picked up Rico Dowdle over the offseason to be the backup to Chuba Hubbard because unfortunately Jonathan Brooks is got re-injured at the end of last year, and I don't think he's projected to even play this season. But he'll be an interesting addition when he is healthy because he was obviously the number one running back coming out of the 2024 draft.
Yep.
So he'll be interesting coming back. That I don't think that'll be this year, but picking up Rico Dowdle, I think is huge behind Chuba Hubbard. And Chuba Hubbard slept on. That man's
He is.
he's a dog.
He is. 100%. Yeah, he's a good back. So they're building something over there. So that's the team to keep our eye on. Not this year, but in the coming years.
No doubt.
Let's see if the Panthers can actually, let's see if all those draft picks they gave up to get Bryce Young, was it worth it? TBD. We'll find out soon. So, but the last division we already talked about them. We didn't pick winners. That's going to be your Seahawks division in the NFC West. Who you got coming out winning the West?
So I think this one's wide open. I think this is the most, and it's not even for. This is the most competitive NFC division I think by far, and it has nothing to do with an excess of talent. I think it's because all four of these teams are lackluster, and I hate saying that as a Seahawks fan. But we talked about it a little bit earlier. The Rams weren't like they won the division last year, but it was off a tiebreaker. They had the Rams and the Seahawks were the two best teams in the NFC West last year with 10 wins apiece. We talked about, the 49ers and them kind of bouncing back from their disappointing season last year. I don't imagine much coming from the Cardinals. I think it's really up in the air. If the Seahawks, and that this is maybe slightly biased, but I think they're the most interesting team in the West right now with a completely revamped offense. Jackson Smith Najigba taking over wide receiver one. They've always had good running backs with K9. I'm not picking the Seahawks to win the West, but I think they have just as good of a chance as the 49ers and the Rams do combined. I think
Okay.
if there's a time for anybody to win the West, all three of those teams outside of the Arizona Cardinals have a chance of winning the West. If I had to put my money on it, I would have to go with the Rams again. Just because I think they've been the most consistent team. Well, the 49ers, I just don't know what's going on with them. They're struggling. They got a lot of rookies that they picked up to try to fill in some gaps. If those rookies can make an immediate impact on the defense where they picked up all those people, uh, look out for them. But otherwise, as far as consistency goes, the Rams here lately have been the more consistent team. And if it was my own money, if I was betting the house on it, I'd have to pick the Rams. But I think Seahawks and 49ers have just as good of a chance.
I got you. I'm also picking the Rams here. I think they have the best quarterback in that division, no doubt. Sean McVay's probably the best head coach. No disrespect to Kyle Shanahan over there at San Francisco, but I think Sean McVay is the best coach. They have the best quarterback, and when you have those two things, you're just gonna win.
Yep.
But could the 49ers outreach and possibly win? Sure. I think they could outplay their expectations, even though from what I'm hearing right now, the expectations around them are very high. Could the Seahawks compete and maybe surprise some teams? Sure. But like you said, if you're betting the house on it, it's got to be the Rams. I'm expecting the Niners to be that second team coming out of the East. No disrespect to your Seahawks.
No.
I just think everything's so new. Cooper Cup's a little older. Sam Darnold, like I said, is he legit? Because we've only seen him play one really good year of football, and that was last year. So we'll find out a lot more about him this year. But yeah, I'm taking the Rams with you coming out of the East. So I think that gives us both Rams coming out of the East. We got Lions and Packers out of the North. We got the both dead Commanders coming out of the East, and we went both Buccaneers coming out of the South. So I think that's probably a very general consensus with the NFC this year. But they say what like three new teams make the playoffs every year. So
Yeah.
do you have a playoff team? And I'm sure your Seahawks come to mind, but do you have that kind of dark horse playoff team that didn't make it last year that you think could find their way in it this year from the
So
NFC?
so yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Again, completely unbiasedly, maybe a little bit of bias, but the Seattle Seahawks last year was the first time since 2009 that they didn't make the playoffs in consecutive years. So the Seahawks went 2 years without making the playoffs, and that hasn't happened in uh since 2009. So I look to them to bounce back this year. I think with the revamped offense, the defensive minded head coach coming into his second year, with some of our signings, our offseason movements, I really do think that uh, Jackson Smith and Najigba is going to be a better wide receiver one than DK was. I hate losing both DK and Tyler Lockett, but just like when we got rid of Russell Wilson, I think this is a move to create a new personality for the Seahawks, a new era, a new ball game. I would have rather keep Geno Smith than Sam Darnold. I think in my opinion, I think Sam Darnold and Geno Smith are basically parallel in skill in the NFL. I think they're about the exact same quarterback as far as performance goes.
That's
Um,
fair.
so I'd have to pick for my dark horse that did not make the playoffs last year to be the Seahawks.
Yeah, that's good. I think the easy answer is the Niners. Didn't make the playoffs last year. I think that's kind of an easy one, and then maybe another easy one. As far as didn't make the playoffs to make it this year, it's the Cowboys. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I don't know much about this new head coach, so we'll see about him. But Dak Prescott, he got hurt mid-season last year, and he's just a regular season guy. He's gonna win football games. They gave him an extra weapon. There's a lot of questions surrounding the Cowboys, but I believe enough in Dak Prescott to get him to the playoffs. Now, are they going to lose in the first round? Yeah, probably. Maybe the second if they're lucky. But to be in the playoffs, like I said, the team that wasn't in there last year, I think I got to go Cowboys. Cowboys and Niners are kind of the easy ones for me. There's not really a team in the NFC where I'm like they didn't make it last year and I'm really expecting a lot from them this year. None of them jump off the page, but I think that the NFC East could be the team where we have three teams make the playoffs with the Eagles, Commanders, and Cowboys.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I don't even consider the Cowboys a dark horse. I think the only reason they didn't make the playoffs last year was because of the Dak Prescott injury and just some of their health problems on the offense specifically. I think there's no doubt in my mind the Dallas Cowboys make the playoffs this year. 49ers for
Yeah.
sure dark horses based off of their performance last year. Um again, that also has a lot to do with them not being able to keep anybody healthy and
Yeah.
we're going to see. I know Debo was a huge part of their offense. If Christian McCaffrey gets hurt again, they will not have a Debo Samuel to kind of fill that role a little bit more because he really cushioned the blow of not having McCaffrey whenever he went out because Debo can literally do anything on the field, play running back, play wide receiver, slot, outside. I mean, he can do anything you ask of him. So it really hinges on their whole team staying healthy and hopefully they don't find themselves regretting letting go of Debo Samuel.
No. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Niners are probably one of the more interesting teams. Like you said, I guess kind of to your point that NFC North or excuse me, the NFC West is probably one of the more interesting divisions this year in football. So it'll be fun. I mean, it always is, but I think we've kind of wrapped up everything on the NFC. You got any last points to kick us off?
No, I got some storylines and debates that we can kind of save for next. We covered a lot of them. One of them I was going to talk about like the NFC quarterback carousel, some impacts of the rookie classes, which NFC rookie class or team you think is going to make the biggest splash in 2025. Some I got a segment called Contenders versus Pretenders, like which NFC teams are legitimate Super Bowl contenders and which are likely to fall short. We covered a lot of these, but just through our normal conversation, I didn't have to actually look at my notes very much for this
Oh yeah.
podcast. So
Well, hey, I love and that's something we can now open up to the whole NFL. We've covered AFC, we've covered NFC, so now we can just, like you said, the contenders, pretend all these. We can just open it up to the whole NFL now throughout these next weeks. We can really start getting into some of these scenarios and finding some interesting talking points. And so, yeah, I think those are good ones. Yeah, that'll be something good to talk about next time. Kind of going through and really diving deeper into these playoff teams and some of these rookie draft classes. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I don't think we've dug too deep on our first 2 podcasts, so, I mean, we can do some pretty deep dives going forward for the next 3 months, and I think even breaking down we could do whole podcasts on deep dives of each team based on divisions and things like that, so we'll have plenty to talk
Oh,
about. But that's this episode of the Front Porch Podcast.